Hello and welcome to another Daily Muppet. In today's video, I want to review the Arsenal game. A little late, but tied into some of the transfer news that I want to discuss, including striker Harry Kane, Gonzalo Ramos, the goalkeeper situation, midfield, and then move on to discussions regarding the sale process and what is going to happen, where things are at, and if there are any substantial updates that we have on that. So let's get right into it. Number one, with regards to Arsenal, obviously the manner in which the game was lost late in the game, after pulling it back level again, was frustrating. But overall, I think I came away from the game feeling pretty positive about things, and I'll tell you why. In general, the problems that you saw in the Arsenal game are the problems we already know. I thought that up front in terms of striker, obviously Weghorst wasn't bad. He's energetic, presses, moves, things like that, but he's obviously not the elite striker that we need up front who's going to hold up play, who's going to link up. You know, when you have Martial in and playing well, you do better as he's able to get on the ball, help you gain some possession. We had good moments, possession. His movement is good, all of that, but he's obviously not the elite player. I would absolutely, you know, be interested in someone like Weghorst on as a backup striker to a big striker this summer, you know, with things not going the way that it should with Anthony Martial, with him out yet again for a longer period of time. So, you know, that's one thing. In the midfield, this is the biggest thing that I would indicate here. Obviously, Casemiro being out is a huge miss. I thought McTominay was far and away the worst player on the pitch for me. I think he backed out of practically everything. He's not aggressive. He's not making tackles. He's not challenging. He's not winning the ball. He's not even particularly marketing. His position is bad. He missed a lot of passes in the game that would have been good passes. There was a number of times. I think there was two separate occasions he was moving to attacking area, and Weghorst was running in front of him into the box, and he couldn't complete a 5-yard pass to him. Very frustrating. We know that, so I think that we know that that is a weakness. We don't have a backup six behind Casemiro. And then the other problem that we know is Eriksen. Off ball and in second halves, Eriksen really cannot cut it. He cannot continue to play at a level that you need from him through two halves of a game. And it's a problem. When Fred came on to help Mark Saka out of the game a bit more, Arsenal had to go to the other side, and that was sort of the plan of bringing Fred on for Anthony, was to mark Saka then and help provide that support on that side, and it helped. But it's too little too late. And you know, and so that obviously ties into the midfield, which we'll discuss in a moment. And then the final thing is goalkeeper. David De Gea made some absolutely baffling decisions in the game. Obviously, there's the viral thing of him punching the ball in open space when Varane is clearing the defense out for him to catch it and relieve the pressure. His distribution was awful. Playing out the back was a huge part of the problem that we were having in maintaining any sort of pressure and getting out of Arsenal's pressure. A big problem, and I just don't, you know, I think David De Gea has been good in stretches this season, and especially against smaller teams where he's not going to be needed to be playing out under a lot more pressure, where he's not going to be needed to be more proactive, where he's not going to be dealing with a lot of crosses and balls into the box. He's been better at that, but in these games he's not. And I think it shows up more in big games. So I think what's happened is in a big game like Arsenal, your weaknesses are accentuated and exposed. But here's the good news. It's the same problems we already knew. And that is a good thing because there's a consistency forming at United. The players who perform. Marcus Rashford is still performing well. We can see where the good is. We can see where things are solid and where we need improvements, and that's not changing. In years past, under Oli, under Jose even at times, you would see week to week, it's a different problem. Oh, now it's the striker. Oh, now it's the left wing. Oh, now it's the right wing. Oh, now it's the defensive mid. Oh, it's the center backs this week. It's not like that anymore. It isn't like that. We've seen a lot of solidity out of the center backs. We've seen a lot of solidity out of the left back with Shaw. with Rashford, with Bruno, we know, with the right back. Wan-Bissaka had a lot of trouble, but I think that was mostly down to the midfield organization being different. Casemiro offers a lot more to his fullbacks than Scott McTominay does. You're seeing consistency. Obviously, Dalot is first choice there anyway, but you're seeing consistency in the areas you want and consistency in the weaknesses. And that leads you to a simple plan for summer because you can identify what's going on. But the fact that with those weaknesses, the team held on, fought, and continued in the game until really running out of steam was good. I would have taken it. You know, it's even on the season series, 3 points apiece. Could have been 4. It was close to 4. I'll take it. Okay, we're not in a title challenge, but it does show where we're at. And then the biggest thing is Arsenal. Obviously, 3 years into this project under Arteta, you can see that under Ten Hag, in 3 years, how well drilled they are into patterns and things like that. That's what you want to see. So I was very encouraged. So moving on to striker. There was a lot of talk about Harry Kane in the news for a little while there, and you know, in a lot of the recent videos, I haven't spoken about Harry Kane, and I want to talk about that because then it came out afterwards that from David Ornstein, the best source for this, that he's open to signing a new deal at Tottenham and staying. And the reason I don't talk much about Harry Kane for the most part is because he's always on United's radar. He's always on their list. He's always of interest. They're always keeping tabs and checking him with his agent, and that's where the stories come from. But from what I've been told for such a long time, it's that they just think he's going to do something else this summer. I don't know if that's the club, but from a source that has been really good on this, they think he's going to do something else this summer, whether it's an offer somewhere else or whether it's staying at Tottenham. They just feel like he's going to do something else this summer. And so it's hard because I don't know what's going to happen with him. I don't know what dealing with Daniel Levy, if that's the problem too. But in general, I continue to get the impression every time there's positive news in the way of Harry Kane, then suddenly you get something like that from Ornstein says he's open to signing a new deal. So can we get him? I don't think so. So that's why it's hard to talk about him in that vein. He's always on the list, but things change rapidly in Harry Kane's situation, and it's hard to plan for it. So other than that, I'm still sticking with, at the moment, Gonzalo Ramos. Most of the media are not talking about him, but most of these journalists are coming from London who are coming on more of the side of Harry Kane. Laurie Whitwell mentioned Gonzalo Ramos again alongside our striker lists. You know, Osimhen is obviously another huge target, but the cost is going to be in the 120, 130 million range, and it may not be doable for United. So when you move down that list, Benjamin Šeško was sort of an old name on the list. He's not been very good this season, and I don't think he's ready to take up the mantle of that top number 9. So you're looking at Harry Kane, may or may not go, may re-sign with Tottenham, may have offers elsewhere, we're not sure. Victor Osimhen, who could be completely outpriced. Benjamin Šeško, who's not that good right now and does not look like he's at the level of what United need for a top out-and-out striker. And then you have Gonzalo Ramos. And that's where I've gone time and time again that the natural conclusion leads to Gonzalo Ramos being potentially the most viable target. And that's the way he's been viewed. I'm not saying the best, but the most viable target for United. That's how I've seen it. That's how I've heard it for months and months. And that's where it continues to be for me. As a side note on the attacking positions, Jadon Sancho. I just want to mention this. He's not going to be playing at the Nottingham Forest. Has been ruled out of it, but they are targeting, as far as I've heard, Reading for him to be involved. Now that may mean just traveling with the team and all of that, but they're hoping at Reading he'd be ready to be involved. Okay, so that would be at the weekend. Reading to be with the team for Reading at the weekend. And that would be the target right now, as far as I understand. And that can obviously change. He's with the team now, so they're taking it day by day, but that's the target. In terms of goalkeeper, discussing that now, it's clearly needed as a target. It's obvious, a modern keeper. It's a priority. It still is. It still is. I'm going to maintain this for a long time, that striker, goalkeeper, and a midfielder are the 3 main priorities. Goalkeeper is still the target. I have heard that David De Gea is likely. The new deal is sort of moving closer and closer. The club don't want to offer that many years, as far as I understand. So maybe that's 2 to 3 years on a contract for De Gea if he signs a new one on lower wages. And that's the timing in which it would be getting a new keeper in, like David Raya. There's been a lot of noise on, and that makes a lot of sense to me. And then, you know, keeping him like competition or rotation, and then, you know, obviously kind of phasing him out. But it seems like 2 to 3 years is a good time to have coverage and all of that. Like I said, I think he's been decent in the smaller games, but not for the bigger ones. So I think you want that first choice keeper. But David De Gea can be serviceable for cup games and things like that too. Obviously, we'll see how the rest of the season goes with that. But they're definitely still targeting and is still a position of priority. In the midfield, so talking about this issue with Eriksen, Fred, and Scott and concerns. One thing I have heard, it was reported this morning, and this I have heard to be true, that and there's been a lot of stories about this, that McTominay could move on in summer, and I do believe that is true. I do believe that is true. The midfield thing is complicated because I keep continuing to hear that it's a priority below striker and goalkeeper, and obviously it's going to be budgetary in the end, how this all happens, how it depends with owners, FFP, all that. We'll talk about that in a second. But the way I see it is we need a backup, an understudy for Casemiro, just as much as we need an understudy for Eriksen. And maybe that's the thought process here a little bit with Ten Hag. I'm trying to think here. You know, I think Eriksen and Fred make a serviceable rotation, especially when Casemiro's playing. You can play Casemiro, Fred, Bruno. You can play Casemiro, Eriksen, Bruno. You can play Casemiro, Fred, Eriksen. You could play all of those, and I think you'd have a serviceable, you know, with Eriksen and Fred rotating enough that Eriksen doesn't get too exhausted. I think you have a serviceable team there. But you take Casemiro out of the picture, and the whole midfield falls apart again. Now, Casemiro is one of the most Iron Man players in terms of being healthy and available, but he's still going to miss games here and there. And I think that a competent understudy for Casemiro is maybe something they could look at, where if they don't want to spend 80, 100 million, or they don't have the target they want in the midfield, because Jude Bellingham is not coming, and Frankie de Jong is extremely unlikely. These are two targets, the names that are all going out there, they're not coming, and Enzo Fernandez is going to be very expensive. So it's tricky here. And when I look at it, I think, you know, if you sign a more deep player, you can push Eriksen higher. One that could even play alongside Casemiro. You can push Eriksen up into rotation with Bruno. There's a lot of flexibility here. It's hard to say what they're going to do. And the thing that's a little bit tough and frustrating is I don't totally hear that it's a priority at the moment beyond striker and goalkeeper. But that may simply mean they've already identified targets and they're not working on it. They're just waiting to see what the money situation is. And that it could be that simple. It's just not as active as striker and goalkeeper from a recruitment sense, as far as I keep hearing. But that's just the way that I hear news and information. Sometimes it's more on the basis of when it's being actively looked at, when people are being contacted, when people are being scouted, how they're being observed. If there's not that much work being done on the midfield area, then it generally means, it doesn't mean they're not going to buy there, but it may mean they've already kind of got exactly what they want, and they're going to wait until they have the money for it, and they don't want to make, you know, panic purchases or things like that in the meantime. But there's extremely low chances, near zero, of Jude Bellingham, and very low on De Jong, and Enzo will be very expensive. So then moving on to the final thing on the takeover, and then I'll discuss this FFP and budget the way I hear it, because there's still conflicting information out there. There was a report that HBSE, the group, Harrison Blitzer Sports, that were in the finalists for Chelsea, were looking at a partial sale. I don't believe this to be true from what I'm hearing, or a partial bid. I don't believe this to be true from what I'm hearing. The main story and the main information right now is of the parties that have contacted the Rain Group, had discussions, opened the books and looking at it. It's American groups, and it's Jim Ratcliffe, and that's it. Those are the only groups that have actually contacted Rain and are making progress on it, and we're now 3 weeks away from kind of the soft bid deadline. So we're going to start hearing in the short, very soon, you know, anybody going public with this, and we're going to start seeing bids in about 2 to 3 weeks now coming out, or the workings of bids and the briefings of bids. So I don't expect that's going to change. There's a story from The Athletic this morning about Qatar and things, and it says that They're not looking to divest of PSG, and they're not going to be buying United. There's nothing in this Dubai stuff anywhere from anywhere reliable at all. There never has been. There is a story about a Saudi consortium that's not the Saudi fund that obviously owned Newcastle, but if it sounds like that might be the same group that was in for Chelsea, and Rain Group ruled them out because they were a debt-backed. It's a more private Saudi media group or something, and they were a debt-financed purchase, which Rain Group would not accept for this kind of buy, I don't believe. And so I believe that's the same group. Nobody knows, but it's not the big Saudi fund that owned Newcastle, obviously, and it's a consortium, so it appears to be whatever group that was. That's in that Athletic report. It's assumed that it's the same group that was in for Chelsea, but I don't expect they would be able to take over Manchester United. So moving in this discussion with regards to FFP and expenses, I'm going to listen to the Athletic podcast on it because they're still talking about it. But from what I'm hearing, it's kind of like this, and I'm trying to set this right. They cannot plan for future owners. They cannot plan for their next set of revenue. So the only thing they can look at is based on their current revenue projections, current expenses, current plans. What they can do is spend big on one player in the summer and then go down the list. So from as I've heard it, they're looking to spend big on a striker, down the list on goalkeeper, which may be why not Diogo Costa, but David Raya, who would be much cheaper, and then perhaps down the list on midfielder or right back, where you'd have sales that result in replacements. So you sell Wan-Bissaka, sign a right back. You sell McTominay and Van de Beek to sign a midfielder. It'd be like for like. You sell a center back like Maguire or Lindelof, which is very much on the table to replace. But only in the striker and the goalkeeper would you not need like sales to bring someone in there. And it would be one bigger, one smaller, and the rest would be sale and replacement. If new owners come in, it cannot be stated that this is the case, even with the FFP rules, because there are things they can do to affect the budget, the balance sheets. There are players that they might want to let go of. There are players they might be more interested in selling. There's ways they might do things differently. So a lot of that cannot be predicted until those new owners come in. But if they do, I do believe you'd have a significant budget this summer and they'd be very active. But they don't necessarily need to spend massive amounts in a couple of areas. There's good goalkeeper targets, so we'll have to see where that all comes out. But none of that can be said for certain until the sale occurs. And at the moment, things should be moving forward pretty soon into being more public with the groups that have asked for access to the records. So I would expect to hear about that even more this week and next week. But in the meantime, the only other thing I can say is there seems to be some exploration for a midfielder loan, but I don't know who. And I've had a thought about this. This is, to me, is interesting. And just the name I'm throwing out there, there's no link to him. I don't believe United are interested. But Weston McKennie, he's American, but he's at Juventus right now. And this isn't really American bias. He's a good player. I wouldn't buy him as a starter. I wouldn't. But Juventus are open to letting him go, likely on a loan plus option. He's good in the air. He's very good on ball. He's defensively solid. And I mean very good on ball. Much better than anyone we've got in terms of the actual dribbling. He was very impressive in the World Cup against England and other countries. Clear upgrade on everything McTominay does that could fit in at the 8 next to Casemiro or could even back him up in a pinch. I would do a loan like that with option in a heartbeat to give us a little bit more in the midfield for the rest of the season. So I don't think they're doing that, but I would hope that they're exploring and perhaps there's a name that could come up in terms of a loan for the midfield, and that's one that I would throw out into the ring. So anyway, thank you for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Leave me your thoughts on all of this below, and I will see you in the next video.